I'll quickly run through the introduction again, although probably everyone's heard it at this point. But yeah, now that we're here in the Discord chit chat channel, we do have Joe Langers, maybe some other team members joining us today to talk about Atlas. We will try to record this as best we can, but there will be a second call later on. Just a reminder again about your mics. If there is background noise, please stay on mute. If you're having any issues speaking, you can always drop a comment in trading. Feel free to tag me so I don't miss it. And yes, as I mentioned, there will be a second call. The second call, hopefully there'll be a little bit more specifics around both Atlas and Shanghai. So some of the discussion topics may be a little bit different, and we will have that as an earlier time that's more suitable for Europe. We obviously know that people are very keen to learn more and to just have a chat about Atlas, hence this call being scheduled now. And yeah, actually that's a good point. Ken, are you around? Ken did offer to kind of co-host, but there won't be too much structure to this call. We're going to chat about 5 main topics, and the first one being the creation of new 8 ETH minipools under Atlas. The second being converting existing 16 ETH minipools to 8 ETH versions. The third being solo migration. May not be so relevant to people who are already hanging around in the Rocket Pool Discord, but that's converting 32 ETH solo validators over to Rocket Pool Minipools. Number 4 would be any impact on rETH holders, what they need to know for liquid stakers, and finally withdrawals being both partial and full. So I see you now, Ken. How's your connection?
Yeah, I think my Discord just kind of quit on me, but I hear you loud and clear. What about on my end?
Very well. If you're happy to, I can hand over control if you want to go through. We do have a bit of an agenda with some bullet points that Ken shared previously, and we could start by going through that if you like, Ken, and see where we go from there.
Yeah. Let's just start. But especially, I'm really actually maybe it's good that Twitter broke and we're on Discord here, because I'd really like this to be as much a community opportunity to ask questions and so forth. But I thought one of the key things in just kicking off is that I think it was earlier this morning. It's all been kind of a blur here in Rocket Pool and crypto Twitter land, but I think we got some dates for both mainnet, and we have at least the start of rolling out Atlas and Goerli. And I thought maybe it might be good to just review some of those dates. Discord here is make certain you have a push to talk on, because we are getting some crosstalk. But I don't know who from the dev team would like to maybe just start about the Goerli dates and kind of tell us what to expect there, and then to mainnet.
Yeah, cool, awesome. So exciting news. So obviously, core devs have kind of highlighted that the 12th of April is going to be the 12th of April. I think it's like 10 in the evening UTC. Is going to be the mainnet launch date for Shanghai and Capella. So that's really exciting. So now we have, it's been quite, I wouldn't say frustrating, but it's certainly been slightly hampering not having a date. It's actually funny that our kind of like estimate for the timings have been actually spot on. So that's been really good. So obviously we've been kind of like following it quite well. So that's really good. So now we've got the date. We can kind of work back from there. I might stay with Goerli first, and then we go onto mainnet. So in terms of Goerli, obviously yesterday we made the changes. We made the changes to the parameter changes. So we changed the deposit pool limit from 5k to 18k. And then we also reduced the rETH target collateral rate from 10% to 1%. So they have now been applied to Goerli, and so that's all done. And that process is pretty clear from our perspective. So then, obviously, the next thing is, when are we going to release Atlas to Goerli? That was going to be basically as I'm talking now, but on discussion this morning, we're actually going to postpone the release to Goerli until our Monday. So that will be your kind of like Sunday night, or sorry, that'd be a lot of people's Sunday night. So the reason why we've chosen to do that is because we kind of realized that there's going to be this period. Now we know the mainnet date. There is going to be this period of time between when Shanghai is released, but Atlas is not, and so there's one element of testing that we need to do before. There's one element of testing, particularly around the reward tree kind of generation. Kind of, funnily enough, the reward tree stuff is banks after, or like, I think it's 7 hours. I think you said, Ken, 7 hours after the hard fork, and so there is going to be this time when we need to essentially test that process, and the only time we can do that is actually on Goerli, and so that's why we're going to hold off launching to Goerli today. We're going to do it on our Monday, so your Sunday night, so that we, over the weekend, so today and over the weekend, we can start that process of testing the reward tree generation in a post-Shanghai, pre-Atlas situation. So that's kind of why we've chosen to do that. So that's the plan at the moment. Kane has already deployed all of the contracts, I believe, or is in the process of deploying those contracts. And so we will kind of verify all of that stuff this afternoon, so that when we're ready to go, it's basically a click of a button to deploy to Goerli. So that's Goerli. Is any questions kind of on that aspect?
Let me see if I could just ask one, but I also invite anybody to come forward. Let me see if I understand this. Is that you're taking the opportunity now in Goerli to really create real world situations as you anticipated for mainnet, and given the dates here,
Yes.
that it sounds like, I think you announced that mainnet would not happen until after Shanghai, so it wouldn't be activated before Shanghai, and it would be after reward period 8. So there's going to be at least some period of time, a day or whatever, I don't know if you set a date for mainnet, that will be Shanghai, post Shanghai, but still Redstone pre-Atlas. Is that correct?
That's right, exactly. Yeah, that's right, exactly. And we weren't quite sure how long that period was going to be, and to be honest, it was kind of like one of the gaps in the testing. So that's why we need to kind of make sure that we go through and just check that situation. Like we don't have any doubts. Joe has actually been testing it kind of with like a Redstone, on Redstone, but not post Shanghai. So we're pretty comfortable that it's compatible with all the contracts. It's not there's that element of it's going to be post Shanghai, and so that's why we need to test that.
Okay, I'll give it a second for people to kind of think about questions, but let me see if I could just probe a couple of more here that might spawn some questions. Which is, okay, let's talk about mainnet now. Then when would we release Smartnode 1.9? And I guess in particular after last night's events, the new Merkle tree generation that it is. Like in mainnet, in your mind, what is the plan for mainnet then? Like when the Smartnode candidate, when Shanghai, when Atlas, etc.
Yeah. So I think now that we have a mainnet date, we can do that work back, and we can be a lot more communicative around what that timeline looks like. Until kind of like the mainnet date is really, it's slightly frustrating because there's nothing definite that we could have said. Now that that's kind of in place, we can actually start making those kind of statements, or that's why we've kind of back channeled it, but we haven't done an official announcement. we'll try and work on like an official announcement to be released on Monday around kind of our release dates. So working back, so we still don't have an exact date, I don't think, anyway. I've been kind of like heads down this morning, but I don't think we've got like an exact date of when their clients are going to be ready, but we do know a ballpark. So at the moment, working backwards, I think we're going to have the Smartnode 1.9 released by the 27th of March. So I think the clients will probably have their the core devs will probably have their clients ready the week of the 20th of March, which is essentially next week. So they'll have theirs ready that week, and so we'll have ours ready on the 27th, kind of probably the latest, but that'll be the 27th. So that'll be the date at which we'll have 1.9 kind of available. That will hopefully include, or that should include all of the clients that are Shanghai compatible. So upgrading to 1.9 will make you Shanghai Capella compatible. It will also have all of the Atlas stuff in it. We may have a follow-on release. There might be like a 1.9 or 1.91 or a 1.92 after that and before Atlas. But the majority of it will be in that release. So you'll be pretty much Atlas compatible by then. The only those other releases should ideally be just refinements and that sort of thing. Obviously, in the next week or so, we're going to be testing on Goerli, and so if anything comes out of that testing in terms of refinements or anything, then we'll include that in those future releases. So that's kind of 1.9. So 1.9 will be like the 27th of March. The ODAL will have kind of they'll actually have quite a while to upgrade, but there's other stuff kind of happening at the same time. So on the 27th of March, we'll also raise the proposal for actually, sorry, no, that's not true. I need to update my timeline. We won't do that. We will. So on the 27th of March, the ODL will have to upgrade that week. So they'll have a few days to upgrade. There's a few changes that we're getting in before Atlas. So the first one is that on around the 3rd of April, the 3rd of April, all of this we'll put in a timeline, so it's a lot more visual for you guys. But around the 3rd of April, we will release the changes to the deposit pool and the RE target rate. Just after that, we'll also release a change to the balances. So there's a balances change that will go in. Nobody will kind of see that really. It'll be from the ODAL perspective, and it'll be baked into the 1.9 release. So the ODAL won't have to do anything. It'll just happen. Then there'll be like a TWAP release, which is like how the RPL price will be updated. And then that week we'll also raise the request for the ODAL for the upgrade. So zooming out, the key dates are that there'll be on the 27th of March, we'll have kind of the 1.9 release. We will raise the proposal for the upgrade on like the week of the 3rd of April. That will then be executed around after the RPL rewards tree and after Chapella has been launched on the week of the 10th of April. So that'll be after the hard fork and after the RPL rewards tree has been generated. Pretty much immediately after that, we will then release or execute the upgrade to Atlas. So that should be around the kind of like the 14th of April.
Yeah, surprisingly, that actually turns out to be kind of a nice and efficient timeline. One technical question, just out of curiosity, has the team ever considered maybe, I mean, the timing works out kind of nice of letting a Shapella go through, without Atlas, and then picking up Atlas, very quickly afterwards, such that we're still like with withdrawals and releases, we still haven't lost any market opportunity. But have we thought about just waiting for a skim cycle to go through? Does that provide any advantage? That might be as short as 2 days after Shapella. Has there been any thought to that or no?
I don't think it necessarily matters too much. My only, I don't think it necessarily. I'll double check. I'll have a bit more of a think about it, but I don't think it necessarily gives us anything. I mean, we can push Atlas slightly further if we need to, but obviously we want to be as close to Shanghai Capella as we can get. But obviously the issue that we have is we have to be after the rewards period. So we have to be after the rewards period, and obviously the tree needs to be generated and all that sort of thing. So that's our main kind of critical path. The reason why we're doing it after that is because we want plenty of time to test the RPL rewards tree generation post Atlas. And so doing it immediately after the rewards checkpoint means that we've got a full kind of 4 weeks to work with the ODAL and go through and do all those checks before the next reward tree. Because obviously there's a lot of introduced things. There's things like LEB8s and withdrawals and all of this sort of thing. All this stuff kind of like affects that stuff. So we're kind of making sure that we have plenty of time to kind of test that out. So that's kind of that. So we could release just slightly afterwards, but we want to be as close to Shanghai Capella as we possibly can.
Okay, let's take a pause and just see anybody from the community have questions about anything that's been discussed so far here.
A35, you had a question in chat. He asked when the audit reports would be released.
Yeah, great question. As soon as possible. So actually, Consensus are still kind of like finishing off their fix checks stuff. So, but they are basically there now. As soon as they are done, which again, as I said, they're basically done with it. Like we had some feedback to go back to them with, and there's a bit of like to and froing between us and them, but they're pretty much ready to kind of like lock that down now. So once they've locked that down, we'll then publish both audit reports, the Sigma Prime one and the Consensus Diligence one. I would kind of expect them to finish. Yeah, maybe even like I would hope we would be able to release them on Monday, but like worst case scenario, very early next week. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. As soon as the audit reports are releasable, then we'll update the unified bug bounty to point to Atlas as well. And so those two things we can kind of do at the same time.
Okay, still, if people have questions, come forward. But let me see if I understand the kind of key points, and I fully would support some written kind of documentation for folks. But so what I think I heard you say, Darren, is that the week of March 20th, we're going to see all the client teams push their final candidates set, and knowing how that goes, they'll probably send a lot of updates afterwards that will bug Joe to death. The week of the 27th, all the Rocket Pool node operators should expect the mainnet version 1.9.0 to come out, and all node operators will have to run that one. That's going to be a required update. Otherwise, we're going to miss the fork. That's the key.
I got it.
Thank you very much. The week of April 3rd, which is off to basically protocol releases. I'll have a kind of a question on that, setting changes, and then a vote to the ODAO to accept the contract updates. Then we reach the week of April 12th, which is Shanghai. we let it go through, and then some yet determined period afterwards, but hopefully a very narrow period. Then Atlas launches right after Chapella.
That is correct. So we'll have like a little. We'll try and do like a Medium article with essentially a little infographic for the key dates, so that people have those. They are still slightly estimated, but they're much more kind of certain now. So we can kind of put that out there so that everyone kind of knows what to expect.
Yeah, perfect. It's certainly a fork, not to miss, both for the PDAO and the node operators as well as the ODAO folks. It's kind of going to be, I think, a very critical one. Darren, can you talk just a little bit about those pre-Atlas changes? There was a little bit of confusion when they were launched here for Goerli. It even kind of caused me to scratch my head a little bit over and trying to go for it. Can you just refresh us a little bit about what is changed underneath the PDAO Guardian settings, and what changes are done via the contract upgrade, and what changes are done via the client software, especially on the ODAO side?
Yeah, so there are parameters that are under kind of like PDAO control, and those two that we kind of mentioned, the deposit pool limit and the rETH target collateral rate, are kind of like PDAO settings. There are ODAO, then there are kind of ODAO settings, but the ODAO settings tend to relate to the ODAO duties themselves. Now, one of the things that we were trying to do is we were looking at kind of doing this bundling of particularly the deposit pool limit increase. We were looking to bundle that with an arbitrage, because obviously when we increase the deposit pool limit, it's going to create this massive gap, and so there is an opportunity to capture that arbitrage if there's a premium, so we were looking, and when we kind of first started looking at this, the premium was very large, and so it was kind of worth doing. And I should say that it's not going to be going to like a Rocket Pool core team Christmas party. It's actually the arbitrage the value was going to be going to rETH holders. But what we've kind of figured out is, first of all, the premium is shrinking and shrinking, so it's actually almost not worth kind of doing that. But we were trying to bundle it all together, and we ended up bundling it up as like an ODAO thing, but it shouldn't have been an ODAO thing. So how it's actually going to run on mainnet is that these settings, the deposit pool limit and the rETH target collateral limit, will actually be just updated by the team. So we have this like PDAO Guardian, which is at the moment kind of controls those settings, and so we will just submit 2 transactions to kind of like change those settings, kind of at the point when we need to change them. We will look at the premium to see whether it's worth doing the arbitrage. At the moment, it's not worth complicating the release for it. But if the premium deepens for some reason, then it's worth doing it. Then Kane already has kind of like the process kind of ready to go, so we can actually implement that if we need to. So that's kind of how that works, and the idea there is to increase the DP, increase the deposit pool limit, so that can start filling up in ahead of like Atlas. Obviously, Atlas will bring a lot of extra capacity. That's its job. It will mean that a lot of the 16 ETH mini pools will be able to convert to 8s. We'll be opening up 8 ETH LEBs as well. So it's going to bring in a lot of kind of capacity, and so we need quite a bit of depth in that deposit pool to soak up some of that. So the idea there is to increase it from 5 to 18 to enable us to capture as much of that momentum as possible.
Okay, perfect. And anybody with questions, feel free to just come in and ask the question here. I'll pause for a second, but then I want to go on and ask some questions then about post Atlas. Okay, not hearing any questions so far. One of the things, I want to kind of talk a little bit about what features can be done when post Atlas here. But maybe one of the things that you mentioned, Langers, that maybe people don't know, I've at least responded to a lot of questions about it, is okay, so there's at least two settings that you're going to change just with the Guardian about 10 days before, 10 to 14 days before the release of Atlas and before Shanghai. One is increasing the deposit pool so we can start to accept more ETH into the deposit pool, so we'll be able to form as many mini pools as possible in that run up before Shanghai. The other one was the rETH contract target rate. And could you just spend a little bit of time explaining what that is and why that matters in the redemption or the burn of rETH? A lot of people are kind of confused about that. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean that's a good question. So it's not kind of immediate, obviously, but so what the rETH collateral target rate is, it's basically how much ETH is kept in the rETH contract specifically for burning, and because everything above that amount will actually go into the deposit pool for kind of like restaking essentially, and so the idea there is that, so currently it's set to like 10%, which is, so it's 10% of, I think, the total supply of rETH, which is quite a lot. And in fact, as we grow, we don't necessarily need the whole kind of like 10% is a lot. And also the other consideration is that 10% is not earning kind of rewards. It is kind of sitting there ready to kind of like do redemptions. So as we grow, there's not necessarily a need to keep it that high, and in fact we probably want to try and keep it as low as possible. Later on, if we end up kind of in a situation where we get some sort of retraction, then we can increase that amount. And so what that will do is then it will start filling up the rETH contract and keeping it aside for redemptions, rather than putting it in the deposit pool. Now the thing is, if there's ETH in the deposit pool as well as the rETH contract, you're going to be able to kind of burn rETH as well. It's just that the deposit pool is obviously that waiting area for node operators, and so there's a possibility that it gets staked, and that's kind of like the balance that we have to. The rETH target collateral rate, I think, is one of those parameters that I think we will tweak a fair bit as we kind of go through. We'll kind of figure out what is a good number. I think 10% was very high, and we need to kind of like figure out where that number is. 1% is good because it means that 1% of the total supply is still a lot for that, but it does mean that we're maximizing the amount of rewards that we can earn as well.
Yeah, perfect. You answered one of my questions, which is it's 1% of the total value locked, right? So it's a significant number, right, even at 1%, and whatever that number is in the rETH target rate, it's always held unstaked for redemptions by rETH token holders. So no node operator can access it. So it's good and bad, and getting it balanced is going to be very important.
That's right. There's definitely a trade-off, and so as I said, that's likely to be a number that we kind of tweak over time to make sure that we get it right. But it's not a number that you can necessarily do straight away. Do you know what I mean? Like we've kind of had our best guess, and so the idea is that we will kind of track it based on how things go.
Yeah, fully agree, 100%. Let me now transition a little bit, but people can always interrupt with questions if they have. But let's now talk like, before when we were trying to get Atlas ahead of Shanghai, we were going to have these weird periods of some features were going to be enabled pre-Shanghai, and some features would have to wait till post-Shanghai because we didn't want people to lose rewards. And so actually digesting this for, an hour or how long we've been talking, it's actually sounding a little bit better in terms of timing. I don't think we could have planned it to be as good as this, but let's talk a little bit now. Once Shanghai gets activated, right? The ODAO's voted for it. The team has initiated it. It's now updated contracts. How does a number of things work? And maybe we'll start about the low ETH bonded ones. What about a new node operator that comes in and they just want to form eight ETH? What is that going to be like? And I'm kind of asking this because many of us, I mean, it's not active on Goerli. Very few of us have actually used Zhejiang. What can we expect once Atlas launches with LEB8 formations? Not conversions, but new LEB8s.
Yeah. So yes, as you said, things are simpler launching after Shangpella. It means that we can turn basically everything on from day one, and it means that the user experience is super simple. You don't get these messages where it says you can't do that sort of thing. So it's good. So it's much simpler from that perspective. So in terms of forming LEB8s, it's super simple. So as you go through today and you'll kind of do like a rocket pool node deposit. It gives you instead as well as a 16 option, it also gives you an 8 option. So post Atlas, it will give you this 8 option. You can select 8 and it will deposit 8. Obviously taking the 24 from liquid stakers or from the deposit pool. The RPL requirement is, now I need to get this right. The minimum is the amount that you're taking from the deposit pool or the liquid stakers. So that's 2.4 ETH worth of RPL, and then you can actually stake up to a maximum of, I think it's 150% of the 8 ETH. So it is 12 ETH. So you can go from 2.4 ETH to 12 ETH. In RPL staking, so that's kind of like your kind of range for RPL. So you'd just kind of stake your RPL in the same way, but you'd have those different kind of limits on whether you are depositing an 8 ETH or a 16 ETH. Yeah, so that's it. But it's basically you get the option of an 8 ETH, and you can kind of do it, and it works in basically the same it works in basically the same way. The only slight difference that you might see is actually you do have that on that. Oh, you have that on your notes. That's your next question, isn't it? The deposit amounts. Yeah, actually, under the hood there is a lot going on, and there's a few things different. Okay, so under the hood, we've got this whole new way that the deposit queue works, and so first of all, the pre-launch amount. So currently the pre-launch amount is 16 ETH. So it's the whole amount that a node operator deposits. So you deposit 16 ETH, and then that whole 16 ETH that gets pre-deposited onto the beacon chain, and then once you've gone through that scrub period, it will then then deposit the further 16. With post Atlas, what it will actually do is you'll deposit 8 ETH, and it will actually pre-launch or pre-deposit pre-stake 1 ETH, and keep the rest in your kind of mini pool, awaiting the scrub check. Once the scrub check is passed, your mini pool is actually allocated the rest of the funds. Once it's allocated the rest of the funds, it will actually then do a 31 ETH deposit. So you'll notice that will be a difference. that there'll actually be like a 1 ETH pre-stake and then a 31 ETH deposit afterwards. That actually has lots of benefits, but particularly around, if you get dissolved and that sort of thing, that becomes easier. So that's that kind of process. The other thing it kind of does is, now I need to kind of like explain it, but essentially, if there is it's hard to believe at the moment because we've got like a massive deposit pool, but at some point, if we may well end up with minipool queues again, which is basically where you have people who have deposited minipools, but they're waiting in a queue and waiting for the deposit pool to fill up enough to match their minipool, their deposit. So one of the kind of quite big changes under the hood is the fact that if you're a node operator and you deposit, that deposit is actually then used to help fund the ones previous to you, if that makes any sense. So essentially, it's an efficiency thing. What it actually means is that we will end up funding minipools a lot faster because we're not just using rETH to fund, or liquid staker funds to fund it. We're actually using the node operator funds to fund it as well. From an accounting perspective, it doesn't really make much of a difference, but from an efficiency perspective, it makes quite a big difference because it means that we can get those minipools funded a lot faster and kind of work through the queue a lot quicker as well. So that was a big thing to kind of unpack there. But there are if you zoom out from a LEB8 perspective, you're just going to have a new option and it'll work exactly the same.
Okay, I want to invite anybody with questions forward. Let me just see if I summarize that. So for new or existing node operators that want to come in with new funds, new ETH, they'll have two choices: the half 16 ETH and 1.6 ETH worth of RPL. There'll be a new choice, the LEB8s. They need 8 ETH and 2.4 ETH of RPL. They get a pick. Their funds that they deposit, in each case, each one will pre-stake 1 ETH to lock in the withdrawal credentials on the beacon chain contract. And the remaining node operator deposit goes into the deposit pool. And, we do expect that it's going to be back like it was maybe 6 months ago, where the deposit pool is empty and there's going to be a node operator queue. If you're new to that, it means you create your mini pool, and it could be, days or weeks before the queue advances to when you're at the top of the queue, and you'll be assigned the next protocol ETH to complete the deposit and actually activate your validator on the beacon chain.
Yes, so that's one version of the future. Another version of the future is that rETH demand just absolutely keeps coming and just soaks up every piece of supply that we throw at it. So there are lots of versions of the future, but yes, that the one version of the future is that we eat up all of the deposit pool. More rETH demand comes in, but our supply is now so much that there are these mini pools awaiting the queue. But the benefit of this new approach is that as new node operators kind of spin up mini pools, their ETH is actually being used to kind of further the ones before them, and so it means that we actually do get those kind of funded much quicker than we did before, where they just kind of hang around and have to be matched with 16 ETH at a time, or in this case it's like 24 ETH at a time, and so this way it's a lot quicker, it's a lot more efficient.
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily quicker, but it certainly does deploy more of the rETH deposits than not. So I see it as an advancement here. Let me now ask a question that I know is going to affect everybody here on the call, myself included, which is, okay, so many of us already have our deployed ETH. We don't have a lot of fresh ETH laying around until we talk about withdrawals a little later in the call. but I think many of us are absolutely excited about doing the conversion of our half 16 to LEB8s. And so what is that going to be look like? I know in some of the early conversations there was we thought there would be a need that there has to be some ETH in the deposit pool, but can you walk us through what it's like to take a half 16 and convert it, and kind of what we should be considering about when making that decision to convert or not convert?
Okay, cool. I will start with kind of like the day in the life, or the kind of experience. So you've got a 16 ETH mini pool, and so what would happen is Atlas would launch, and this migration will be activated on day one or immediately on Atlas. And previously there was talk of kind of disabling it before Shanghai was done, but because we're post Shanghai, it doesn't really matter anymore. So you can. I'll need to triple check with this with Kane maybe, but you can actually migrate whenever you want. There's actually kind of like no time limit on it now. Let's circle back. So you've got this 16 ETH mini pool. Essentially, what you would do is you would there's a command called begin bond reduction. You would kind of execute that command in the CLI, and that would kind of give your intention to reduce that the bond amount. What that actually does is it kind of like records what your balance is at the time of the begin, and it also checks to make sure that you are still kind of like an active validator and all that sort of thing, to make sure that you're not trying to kind of cheat the bond reduction. You're an active validator, and that you're not kind of slashed and that sort of thing. So that it does. The ODAO will go ahead and do those checks within a scrub period. If you're cool, and then you'll be able to then do a bond reduction. Now, the bond reduction kind of scrub period is actually 2 days at the moment. So there's kind of some reasoning behind that. I'll need to bring that up. We're trying to include it in some other documentation, but there's got some reasoning why it's kind of 2 days. Mainly it's to give the ODAO plenty of time to with like gas and all that sort of stuff to make sure that they can make a call on what you've done. It also, I think there's also kind of like a skimming thing in there as well. I'll double check what that reasoning behind that 2 days was. So essentially you have to wait kind of like 2 days, and once the 2 days is done, then your node will actually automatically do the bond reduction when it can, and so it will execute this bond reduction. And what that means is that your 16 ETH minipool is now an 8 ETH minipool. So it means that your share of that minipool is now 8 ETH, and our ETH holders are 24, and you will have an 8 ETH credit. So you'll have an 8 ETH credit to be able to spin up another minipool. Now, what you'll need to do then is when you actually do like a rocket pool node status, it will kind of show you that. So it'll say that it actually shows you near the top that you've got this like 8 ETH credit. Now, there still needs to be some ETH in the deposit pool to enable the pre-stake. So you don't have to supply any ETH. You just so to be able to spin up your 8 ETH mini pool using your credit, you would just do basically rocket pool node deposit. You would choose 8 ETH, and it will detect the fact that you've got a credit, and it will use your credit to do it. There does need to be 1 ETH in the deposit pool though, so that is that kind of like a constraint of using your credit. I will double check with Kane again, but I think there is a possibility that you can provide if you want to not use your credit. I think there's a way you can basically do it so that you provide the 8 ETH, but you don't use your credit. So just in case you want to kind of get around that that thing. But essentially, you can then use that credit without kind of depositing any further ETH. That will then create you an 8 ETH mini pool. It'll be in pre-launch. It'll go through the scrub period and eventually get staked. And that's kind of like how that process works.
Okay, let me walk us through that, or ask some questions on that, because it's a little complicated, right? Especially if we haven't played with it in Zhejiang, and everybody's going to play with it in Goerli this week, I hope. So let's back up. I've got, let's just say one half 16 mini pool. One concern, I guess, that we were advised on is that we don't want to convert it to an LEB8 until we go through our first skim, right? That's still true, right? Because we want to get all of our earned rewards before we do the conversion. Is that correct?
So not actually with this new way, no. So you don't have to worry about that. So what I'll actually do is when you do the begin, it will kind of basically take your balance, and it will submit that as the balance. The Audit will check to make sure that you've actually got that balance on the beacon chain. Or so it checks to make sure that you've got it on the beacon chain, or it's on your mini pool. And then what it actually does is when you do the bond reduction, it assigns you a refund for the amount that's over 32 ETH. And so in actual fact, you don't have to necessarily worry about the skimming because of this, because of that process. I mean, you could do, if you don't want to necessarily, like, in that scenario, if you haven't been skimmed, you might miss out on like 2 days worth of rewards, in the worst case scenario, because of the whole scrub period. And so you probably do want to wait for a skim, but it's not necessarily a big deal, because we actually assign you a refund for the amount above 32 anyway.
Oh, I did not know that. So this is actually really good news. So then we don't have to worry about people front running or getting ahead of their first skim, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, and then then okay. So let's say I have that half 16, and maybe I don't worry about the skim. 2 days of rewards, price difference is not gonna matter much. I go ahead and I do the begin bond reduction. Now, I think I understood you to say that there's 2 periods. There's another scrub check to make certain that my half 16 is eligible to be reduced. It verifies I have enough RPL in my wallet to fund it. So I have to go from 1.6 ETH to 2.4 ETH worth of RPL. And how long does that scrub take?
So that's two days. So it's 2 days for the scrub period. So you go begin, and then you wait 2 days, and then after that 2 day period, it can then do the actual bond reduction. And it has kind of like 2 days to do the bond reduction. So if your node kind of like has an issue or something, then it kind of has 2 days to actually confirm the bond reduction. If you end up and you have your node is on the blink for some reason, and it doesn't do that, all that really happens is that the timeout runs out and you have to begin the process again. So essentially what you have to do is then do like another begin, and then eventually your node will confirm it again. It's basically a two phase thing. It goes begin and then confirm, and in between is kind of like 2 days.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was trying to get in my head. So let me ask 2 follow-up questions. I guess one is that it sounds like if I fail to do the second, so there's 2 transactions: begin bond reduction BBR, and then reduce bond. And it sounds like I have to do the second transaction within 48 hours, 2 days, right? And so, but let's say I don't do that, or something happens to my node. Is there any damage other than just lost gas costs?
No, just lost gas costs. Yeah. So, and the begin bond reduction is not expensive. So, I need to double check what it is, but it's not like it's deploying a contract or anything. It's actually pretty reasonable. So yeah, you just lose a little bit of gas by doing that. Your node will do that second transaction. The second transaction is similar to a stake. So it's like a background transaction that your node will do automatically anyway. So you don't have to remember to do it, but you should probably pay attention to make sure that it has done it.
Yeah, good point. And I did update the gas tracking spreadsheet with some Zhang numbers, and nothing was really all that cost prohibitive. I thought there was great gas savings. And then the other key thing you said is that it doesn't really depend to do the bond reduction, because there's really no ETH. It's just a credit to how much is mine and how much is the protocol ETH. It does not matter the amount in the deposit pool. What does matter in the deposit pool is the next step, right? So if I take my half 16, I make it an LEB8, I get a credit in my account. Now it does matter when I go to redeem that credit and I try to do a node deposit, and instead of providing 8 more ETH, I just give it 8 ETH worth of credit from my account. When I do that, there has to be at least 1 ETH in the deposit pool. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah, because to spin up a mini pool, you need to do the pre-stake, and so there has to be at least 1 ETH in the deposit pool for the pre-stake.
Yeah, so that may be something.
That's kind of one of the reasons why we've reduced it to 1 rather than any other number.
Yeah, so it's easily to obtain, and I guess this is just important to share with everybody, because if, let's say, you have a number of mini pools and you go switch them over, by the time you clear the scrub period, 48 hours later, and you get your credits, and you want to restake those credits to form your second half of the LEB8s. You just be aware that if the deposit pool is empty, you might have to time your redemption until the deposit pool has some more money in it.
That's right, exactly, yeah. Yeah, so that will be a kind of a thing. One thing that we didn't want is, one thing that we kind of worked on a little bit, is to make sure that people aren't stuck once they've got a credit. So if the deposit pool is empty and you really want to submit an LEB8, but you don't want to use your credit, we kind of have a mechanism for that, so that you can actually deposit 8 ETH if you want to, and still kind of go down that route. But if you don't supply the value, then it will just use your credit.
Okay, that's good to know. Let me just take a short pause, because I feel this is the really important stuff, to see if there's any questions by the community so far. And I think Jackie Pants. Yeah.
So you don't need the 1 ETH to start the bond reduction. You need the 1 ETH. You need the 1 ETH when you go to. What you do is you go through the bond reduction process, and you don't need any ETH for that, because it's just converting your existing mini pool. But you need 1 ETH in the deposit pool, not your that's actually, you said that, not your node, but in the deposit pool, to be able to claim your credit and be able to create a new LEB8 from your credit.
Yeah, and that's because it's actually it needs to put 1 ETH into the beacon chain deposit contract to lock the withdrawal credential. So that's why right. When you redeem your second half, you're taking your half 16 to make 2 LEB8s. When you redeem your credit for that second LEB8, there's got to be at least 1 ETH of protocol ETH to lock your withdrawal credential.
Yeah, that's it.
Hey, this is Jackie Pants. I have another question, if you guys don't mind.
Yeah,
go ahead, please.
Speaking from the most effective route, is it better to wait until Atlas and start 2 8 mini pools, or start at 16 now and then do the bond reduction at a later point?
I might have to defer
Already
to
paying
other
double
people.
gas by doing 16 now.
I couldn't answer that. So my opinion, since we are basically like a month out, is it is more cost effective to wait until Atlas and then spin up 2 8s, because if you spin up 116 now, you're gonna have to pay for the gas to make that 16, and then after Atlas, you're gonna have to pay for the gas to bring it down to an 8, and the gas to spin up another 8. And Kane has done some pretty legendary adjustments and fixes and optimizations to the process. So spinning up a mini pool after Atlas takes like 40% less gas than it does today.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah.
Any other questions of the community about the conversion of half 16s to LEB8s? I mean, the one other thing I think I'll add why people think of a question is that one thing is you have to be aware of is you need more RPL, right? Because, if you just have one half 16, you're using 16 ETH of protocol ETH. But when you go to 2 LEB8s, you're actually going to be taking on 48 ETH, right? So basically your node, if you just want to do the math and percentages, your node has to have a 30% RPL bonding ratio, and you can then convert to, all your halves to, 2 LEB8s for each half. If you're below that 30%, then you need more RPL.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly.
Yeah, let me then ask, and people can always ask any questions about any of the topics we've covered so far. But let's talk just a little bit about withdrawals as well too, because this is a thing. So many of us are going to have our half 16s. I think probably everybody, if they've done the numbers, is very excited to convert them over to LEB8s for their return and for the protocol. But walk us through this withdraw thing just a little bit more. I think it maybe if Langers, you could talk about the difference between partial and full withdraws, and then help me understand, where does that money go into? Does that go into my mini pool contract? And if I have multiple mini pools, am I going to have to redeem from each mini pool contract? How is this going to work?
Right. So actually, one thing before we tackle that is, so with a half 16 to LEB8 conversion, and also for anything to do with withdrawals, one thing you'll have to do first is update your mini pool to the latest delegate. So when we launch Atlas, one of the things that we're releasing is a new mini pool delegate, which basically means it's the code that your mini pool actually refers to. And because we've got this kind of like opt-in process where you opt into upgrades, one thing that you'll need to do first is to upgrade from the previous delegate to this new delegate, so that it includes all the shiny new functionality essentially, and so that you can actually do this stuff. Your node will tell you that, like if you try to use the new stuff with that old delegate, it won't let you. But that's just one thing to kind of bear in mind. The node, the Smartnode stack also makes that super simple to do. I don't think it's very expensive to kind of upgrade the delegate. I think it's a pretty cheap operation, but it is kind of going to cost you some gas to upgrade your delegates. The Smartnode makes that simple. You can basically upgrade all of them at the same time, or you can do a few and that sort of thing. So the Smartnode kind of helps you with that. But that's one thing to bear in mind when using the new stuff, is that you'll need to. That's in terms of the conversion and anything to do with withdrawals. To be able to do that, you need to upgrade your delegate. So that's the first thing to kind of put out there. So then the next thing is, as you said, skimming, or kind of like partial withdrawals. So obviously there's two types of withdrawals. There's partial withdrawals and then the full withdrawals. partial withdrawals is this skimming off the top of everything above 32 ETH. Kind of gets skimmed and put into or gets sent to your withdrawal credential. Now, I should be very careful with my terminology here, but withdrawal credential is a beacon chain thing, and that actually points to your Minipool contract. It's not something related to your withdrawal address, which is a Rocket Pool thing. So what happens is anything above 32 will be skimmed and it will be sent to your Minipool, and it will kind of like sit in there, and your node, when you'll be able to kind of query it, and it will tell you, oh, you've got 5 ETH in there, of which there's X amount is your share and X amount is Liquid Staker's share. And then skimming is distributing that is super simple. You essentially just execute distribute, and it will then kind of do the split between what is your share of the rewards, and what is rETH kind of Liquid Staker rewards. For rETH, it will just kind of put it back into the deposit pool or back into the system. For you, it will send it to your withdrawal address, whatever that's kind of being configured at. And so that you can then kind of access those rewards whenever you want. In a full withdrawal situation, so if you've exited your Minipool and the full 32 has come back into your Minipool, it works exactly the same way. You would just go through the distribute process, but because you've kind of you've exited the full amount into your Minipool, then it will actually essentially calculate what is your share of the original amount, which is the 8 ETH that you provide, or the 16 ETH that you provided, and then kind of distribute it appropriately based on that. It will also kind of like finalize the Minipool, which means that your RPL essentially gets unlocked. So that at that point, it'll kind of do this thing where it does distribute, balance, and finalize, and it will kind of like finalize your Minipool, which means that you can actually then unstake your RPL that is kind of for that particular Minipool. That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see if I have questions here. Lots to digest in what you've shared. So let's rewind back to the upgrade, the Minipool. And I was trying to think. I don't know if I've ever upgraded a Minipool contract here, right? So if a node operator, let's say, has
nobody has upgraded a Minipool contract except Dave.
Okay, perfect. I was thinking this is a new one on me. So like, let's say you're a node operator, you've got 4 Minipools, right? Is that just a single command and it does it, or is that one I'm going to have to be doing each Minipool?
It's a single command in the sense that you can go to the Smartnode stack, you can say upgrade, and then it will give you the option of choosing an individual Minipool to upgrade, or you can basically select all. It will then kind of like iterate through your Minipools, and they're individual transactions, but it will actually go through that process and just fire off all of the transactions for you to go through and upgrade those Minipools.
And from my memory, wasn't there some option that just said like always use the latest delegate? Is that advised to save having to do this every time, or is that too dangerous to do?
I will double check. So you can actually that.
I'm definitely playing with the idea of turning it on. I'm
that
biased,
may actually
right?
be.
But yeah.
I mean, that may actually be a thing to do. To be honest, I'll double check and see whether that's a thing that we can kind of like wholesale recommend. But yes, that would essentially mean that you don't need to go through. Well, I think I'll double check that as well, but I'm pretty sure that means that you don't have to go through and upgrade each Minipool. The reason why it's done the way it is because we want to make sure that we give people the option to roll forward, opting into changes. using that use latest, what it does is it will always use the latest delegate, and so whatever we deploy, it will use. So, which for the most case, as Joe said, there's some bias because we're pretty comfortable with that. Not everyone is, but if you're comfortable with that, then that's a situation that's fine.
Okay, something we're going to have to do research on, and pros and cons, and contract permissions versus just accept all cookies. I'm not going to click every cookie on a website and go through it, right? Yeah. And then, okay, so now,
that's it.
yeah, now let's talk about the partial withdrawals you talked about, right? So the beacon chain, Shanghai, Chapella, they come around. There's this thing called the skimmer, this like little rotating thing that's processing. I think it's 8 or 16 validators every block and processing their withdrawals. But many of us have been validating for more than a year with Rocket Pool, and so we've got I think it's about an ETH on each mini pool or something close to that, I bet by now. And so what happens? That goes to, you made a distinction, that goes to the withdraw credential. And in the case of Rocket Pool, it's already a 0x01 smart contract or Ethereum address. That's the Minipool smart contract, right? So automatically, without any intervention, within a couple of days after Shanghai, it's going to go through all of the validators, and anything over 32 ETH, that whole ETH or whatever our rewards are, is going to magically appear in our Minipool smart contract. It's in there, right? But we can't get it until we actually call distribute or some command, I don't know the name of the command, that actually then processes that smart contract and sends the node operator their share, and the rETH or their share, and that the node operator share goes to their withdraw address. That's supposed to be our hardware wallet or our cold wallet that we have offline and locked, correct?
That's it. That's correct. Yes. So actually, to break that down slightly, and it's actually quite fun playing with it on Zhejiang. So, yes, the beacon chain will process those schemes. Now, Beacon Chain, the website, shows you those withdrawals. So when you go to your validator page, there'll be a new tab that says withdrawals. They even do it kind of like ahead of time as well, so that it actually shows you. I don't know how far ahead. Must be maybe something to do with the epochs, but they can actually tell you it's going to be in half an hour or a couple of hours. And so they actually show you all of the withdrawals on that page. So that's kind of one way that you can get visibility of those withdrawals coming through. And then once that has actually been withdrawn, and that's automatic, that will end up in your mini pool. So each mini pool. So if you've got 4 mini pools and they've all got 34 ETH in them, then 2 ETH will be skimmed from each mini pool, and so you'll have 4 mini pools that will have 2 ETH in the actual mini pool itself, and 32 on the beacon chain. That 2 ETH that's sitting in the mini pool can be distributed at any time, so you don't have to do it straight away. You can do it whenever you want. And so you can, when you call, it's like Rocket Pool Minipool distribute. Again, it'll give you a list of all of the mini pools that you want to distribute, and then you choose the one you want to distribute, or I think there might be an all function for that, I can't remember, and then it'll go through and distribute.
Now, the one thing I was thinking is, I mean, I know it would take a number of years to get there, but people should probably call distribute before it reaches the threshold of 8 ETH. Otherwise, it will confuse an accumulated partial withdrawals with a full withdrawal, right?
Yeah, that is a very good point. So actually, one thing that we don't think we haven't put it in there yet, but one thing that we're putting into the Smartnode stack is that at some threshold, it will kind of start auto distributing for you. The reason behind that is, so the way that we know between a partial withdrawal and a full withdrawal is if it's basically above 8 ETH. If you've got 8 ETH in your mini pool, or above 8 ETH in your mini pool, then that's a full withdrawal. If it's below 8 ETH, then it's a partial withdrawal. And so, yeah, it would take quite a few years to get to 8 ETH, but you need to kind of not have it get to that point, because you may well, if you try to distribute it above 8 ETH without doing a full withdrawal. So if you just do it above 8 ETH, then it will assume that it's a full withdrawal and that you've been slashed, and so, or quite badly slashed. So it will kind of treat you that way. So that's why I say you should kind of distribute I don't say often, but you should distribute every few ETH or something like that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And yeah, it'd be great if there was some failsafe that would auto execute it, or allow somebody to execute it or something, so it doesn't confuse a slashing with a with an accumulated distribution.
Well, actually, so there is a process that someone can distribute it for you. That's kind of there's a few reasons why that's in there. The main reason actually is just so that node operators don't hold back things from rETH holders, from rETH liquid stakers. But there is a process where someone can execute the distribute for you. Now, obviously, distribute just means that you get the money. So there's no like stealing of it or anything like that. But it just means that you get the money. But there is like a way for someone to distribute it for you. There's kind of like a process where they have to, essentially it's a two-phase thing. They have to say, I want to use or distribute this, and then they have to wait 14 days, and those 14 days allow you the opportunity to distribute it whenever you want. So if you would prefer to just distribute it now, then you just do it. Otherwise, they will execute like the user distribute, the second phase of that user distribute, which would essentially do the same thing as what you would do when you distributed it. And so there is that kind of fail safe, so that if someone gets too close to their 8 ETH, someone or us, we could actually do that for them to make sure that they don't get kind of slashed.
Oh, that's good to hear. There's that fail safe, or that safeguard in there. I think that's great.
Yeah.
All right, I'm not hearing any other questions about the LEB conversion. I know it's something I'm absolutely looking forward to here, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out. But unless anybody has questions on that, maybe I can just ask a little bit of questions about solo migration, right? And I guess that, given the timing now, everything's going to go live when Atlas launches, because it's going to be in the last position, right? What should if we have solo operators, and I'm not a solo operator here, so I'm kind of asking the question in the blind, but when can they perform a solo migration? What's the deal on that?
Actually, Dinam has a good question. So in the chat about the full withdrawals and that sort of thing. So they basically say, what if you get a big block proposal? Is that a separate wallet to withdraw to prevent the 8 ETH / assumption issue? So everyone asked that question, and we asked that question of ourselves as well. But no, they're two separate things. So if you get a big block proposal, so block proposals are from a consensus. You have to remember there's execution layer rewards and consensus layer rewards. Consensus layer rewards, when you get a block proposal, is essentially a set amount that you get for a block proposal, but all of the MEV and the variable bit is actually in the execution rewards side. So, and the execution rewards go to your fee distributor rather than your mini pool. So So it actually goes to a separate contract. So it'll either go to your fee distributor or it'll go to the smoothing pool, depending on whether you're kind of opted into the smoothing pool or not. And so it doesn't affect this this process of withdrawals because it essentially the consensus layer rewards are much more easy to rationalize about, because they're kind of like this progressive thing that kind of happens over time, whereas the execution rewards can be extremely variable, and so but that they're completely separate. So as I said, the execution rewards go to your fee distributor, and the consensus layer rewards go to your mini pool.
Yeah, excellent question. And I too have gotten tripped over that a little bit at times, right? Hard to keep these things separated. Execution layers to smoothing pool or fee distributor, consensus rewards to first your withdrawal credential, which points to your mini pool contract, which then points to your withdrawal address. Feel like we need a great sleety infographic to make this clear on this thing here. Any other questions? Yeah, yeah. I was thinking there's a lot of layers to the complexity here. So I really appreciate you hanging on the call and going along with us here, because it is just such an important one here. And it looks like DNUM actually has some follow-up questions to that. I don't know, Darren, you want to read those and answer?
So when receiving the credit to launch additional 8 ETH, your current 16 ETH mini pool, you can assume is 8 LEB, and its calculation for your portion is automatically updated. Yes, that's correct. When it's confirmed, so you do the begin, and then on the second step, when it actually confirms the bond reduction, the amounts that basically get updated within the mini pool itself, or essentially the accounting, make it an LEB 8 rather than a 16. And so from that, the portion that you get, okay, so actually I should say that there's two slightly different elements there. So when you do the begin, as I said before, you provide the balance, and then anything above 32 ETH is assumed to be as part of your 16, and so we calculate the refund based on that. So you get kind of like the refund based on that, but then everything else from then on in, it's basically an 8 LEB, and the portion is when you distribute, it's going to be distributing it as an LEB 8 rather than a 16. So I imagine skim first, convert to LEB, assume all are calculating as 25% ETH rewards. Oh, actually, yeah, sorry, I should say, I'm not sure I'll get the 25% ETH rewards, but I should also say, as part of that bond reduction, the commission gets updated. So so this is kind of this is particularly good news for anybody who's below 15%.
Anybody, even if you're at 20%, because
it's still good.
314s is bigger than a 20%, you know.
Yeah, but if you're sitting on 5, it's even better.
Oh yeah.
So if no matter what your commission rate is on your mini pool, when you reduce, so if you've got a 16 ETH mini pool and it's got a 5% commission on it, when you reduce it to an 8 ETH LEB, it will change the commission rate to 14%. So it'll change, and it'll be 14% on the 24, obviously. So so for people who have like 5% mini pools, that's going to be a massive leap. Even for people who have like 20% ones, it's going to be an increase as well. And so that's kind of like that kind of incentive to move to LEB 8s, and kind of give more capacity in terms of rETH.
Yeah, if you work the math,
Um,
no matter what your node commission, it's more financially advantageous to the node operator. And like even myself, I'm debating, well, are my 5%ers going to go first, or I've got one very unlucky validator that I think's only proposed twice in its lifetime, and maybe that one's going to meet its death first. But yeah, I mean, I think Denom, your math looks right on there, right? The one thing I will say is, if you missed it,
Yeah.
Langers had shared that the skimming, when you do the conversion, we no longer have to wait for the first skim. If you do it before the first skim, it sounds like it will do the maths correctly to give you your full earned rewards up to the point of that bond reduction.
Yeah, that's right. And that'll show itself as a refund. So to claim that amount, you'll have to call refund on it. And if you do like a Rocket Pool node status, it'll tell you that you've got some mini pools with refunds. And then if you go Rocket Pool mini pool refund, it'll tell you which ones have got refunds and how much of the refunds are in there. And so you just need to basically call refund, and you'll be able to get that amount out.
Yeah, that's perfect. I saw those on Zhejiang. I just didn't know what they were. But it's brilliant. We don't have to have this weird timing where Joe has to wait until the first skim to activate the conversions. I think that's just a brilliant solution. Whoever thought of it among the team members.
Yeah, so how it works actually before your first skim is that obviously, so what it'll actually do is it'll give you the refund, but the ETH isn't in your mini pool yet, right? So before your first skim, you might have 34 ETH on the beacon chain, but you have 0 in your mini pool. So when you do the bond reduction, it'll say, okay, so you've got like 2 ETH of rewards. So we're going to split that as if you're a 16, and you get this amount of refund. So the refund will be on your mini pool, but the amount won't be in your mini pool yet until it's skimmed. So obviously you won't be able to actually execute that refund until the skim happens. The skim will happen. The 2 ETH will land in your mini pool, and then you'll be able to then refund that.
Yeah, I think you answered the question. You won't receive 8. You in Denom, in your question here, you won't receive a 10 ETH credit. You'll only receive an 8 ETH credit, but you'll receive that refund that's due for your share of that 2 ETH.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you'll have an 8 ETH credit and a but you won't have a 2 ETH. You'll actually have like a, what is it, like a
1.1 or 1.2, something like that.
1.1 something refund.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe we'll advance forward to the solo migration. What are the key things, Darren, that you think is important for solo migrators that are hearing this either now or on replay?
Yeah. So migrating to Rocket Pool is super simple. The key prerequisite though is that you have to have a 0x0 key withdrawal credential. So if you've spun up your solo migrator using a 0x0 BLS key, then you can actually migrate to Rocket Pool without exiting your validator. If you're using a 0x1, then you can't, unfortunately. This is kind of like a one shot deal. Unfortunately, well, I say unfortunately, but I'm not quite sure if it's unfortunately or not. It's unfortunately for us. You can only change your withdrawal credential once. Actually, that is fortunate for us. You can only change your withdrawal credential once. So with this whole kind of like, there's going to be this new message which changes a BS key into an Ethereum address, like a 0x1, and so that is you only do that once, and so there's this one-time opportunity to migrate to Rocket Pool, but it is super simple. Now it is super simple, but it kind of depends on how you want to run your infrastructure, and that's where it gets slightly complicated. But the process itself is very simple. Essentially, what you do. So, okay, I'm going to do like the easiest kind of user experience, and then we'll talk about the slightly more complicated one. So, the easiest user experience is you have a solo migrator, and it's ticking along. It's in Lighthouse or whatever client you're using. It's in the VC, and you essentially what you do is you want to migrate one of those keys over to Rocket Pool, or a few of those keys to Rocket Pool. You do it basically one key at a time. Okay, so what you'd actually do is you would disable your key. It would then go offline, obviously, and you'd see your key, or see your validated kind of missing attestations and that sort of stuff. So that's all good. What you would then need to do is we have like a solo migration process where it's called creating a vacant minipool. A vacant minipool is like it's basically an empty minipool, right? And we're going to kind of fill it with a solo staker kind of migration. So you create this vacant minipool, and it will create the vacant minipool for you, and then it will kind of ask you to enter in the pub key of the one you want to migrate. You will also, if you're migrating your keys into the Rocket Pool Smartnode stack, you will then need to provide. It'll ask you for your mnemonic as like word 1, word 2, word 3, word 4, and all that sort of stuff. It doesn't store mnemonic as far as I know. I'll double check that. But anyway, it goes through that process of taking your mnemonic, and then it will then import. So it'll import your key into the Smartnode stack. It will automatically submit a BLS change. So from a BLS key to your new Rocket Pool Minipool, which is this new vacant Minipool. Okay. It will go through that process of importing the keys, and then essentially that vacant Minipool will then kind of like sit there. And again, there's this kind of like scrub period. It's called like the promotion scrub period, where the DAO basically just checks to make sure that again, you've got enough ETH in you haven't been slashed, that it's active, that all those things to make sure that it's a valid kind of validator. And then after the scrub period is kind of finished, your node will then call this kind of method called promote. And once it does promote, it will actually then be running as a Rocket Pool Minipool. So it will create. So it would have created the Minipool, but then at that point, all of the accounting is updated, and so you're essentially there running, in this case, like an LEB8. And so what it means is that, and actually it does the same thing with the refund. So anything above 32 ETH will be a refund. The rest of the 32 ETH gets split between 8 ETH being your 8 ETH and 24 ETH going to as liquid staker ETH. But then you get a credit. So you get a credit for the other 24 ETH. So you can then spin up other mini pools as well from that, using kind of without depositing any more ETH. So that's how all the kind of accounting works, is that your 32, you end up creating an 8 ETH mini pool using this kind of like solo migration thing, but you then get that credit to be able to spin up more mini pools. I'm going to stop there because I've said a lot.
Yeah, I'll give people a moment to kind of compose their thoughts for questions, but it does kind of it just kind of dawned on me that, a couple of things. One, I mean, most solo node validators are going to want to do a 0x01 conversion just to gain access to their reward. So there's some opportunity here. But I almost wonder if doing like a special call with ETH takers on this conversion or a walkthrough once we launch on Goerli here in the coming weeks might be helpful. But what do people think? Do people have questions here, or what would they like to see on solo node conversion? And I apologize, Joe, I haven't read your documentation on it yet.
I'll forgive you, but just this once.
Any questions on solo node migration that you have now? And if not, then I'll just move quickly to some questions and topics about rETH holders, and then we can open it up for any questions at the end, if that sounds good.
Yep, it's fine with me.
Okay. So let's just talk a little bit about the rETH stakers. These are individuals that hold the rETH token. What is Shanghai and Atlas going to look like to them? In particular, I guess we're going to start seeing all these skimmings occur. We're going to see mini node operators want to claim their year-long or multiple year-long rewards finally. So we're going to see the rETH contract start to fill the 1%. It's going to give an opportunity then for rETH holders to redeem at market value, which might be a little less than the slight premium they get right now in redeeming. We're going to see the funds spill over to the deposit pool. Even if the deposit pool is full, right? It's still going to keep spilling into the deposit pool. It's going to go greater than 18,000, right? And then what happens? How does an rETH holder redeem their rETH? Are we going to have like the reverse of the contract that Nick put together that's going to look at market prices and protocol prices and redeem at the highest value? Or what's this whole experience going to be for the rETH holders among us?
So from an rETH holder perspective, things don't change that much, to be honest. They continue, if they can continue to hold rETH. They'll continue, the price will, or the balance, the exchange rate will continue to go up. The only real differences from an rETH perspective is that there'll be more liquidity to be able to unstake from a well, actually there's two. With Atlas, it means that there's more capacity to get more rETH, which is that there should be more liquidity to be able to unstake. So that's kind of coming back all the time. And so yeah, there's kind of that. So I mean, from their perspective, it doesn't really because they can unstake today at market rate if they wanted to. Oh, sorry, actually, yeah, the thing that you're talking about is the router. So the router actually supports both ways at the moment. So from the website perspective, it will route you to the best rate anyway. So whether that's the deposit pool or whether that is the open market, it will kind of depend. So so yeah, as the premium closes, it'll be interesting about which way it kind of goes, but it'll essentially kind of choose the best rate for you, whether that's the deposit pool or the open market. So if there's a discount on the open market, then it'll obviously buy it from the open market. If there's a premium, then it'll buy it from the deposit pool. And the same with the opposite is true for unstake.
Yeah, that's a really great description, and I'm kind of thinking it's really going to help stabilize the price to unpeg, because there's always going to be a flow in the rETH contract. There's going to be times where it spills over into the deposit pool. An rEther can always buy and redeem at protocol prices, at true value prices. So that's going to put pressure on the RBots to keep the market prices, the secondary market prices, on par with the actual true value prices. So it should really help improve the experience of the liquid staking token holder, the rETH holders.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that is definitely a big change, in the sense that ideally the rETH price will be, I guess, less volatile, or less kind of big swing either way. And so that should kind of improve, but we will kind of have to see that over time, see how that goes.
Yeah, theory and practice are always always something different here for it. So I think I've covered all of the major topics that at least I had in my outline here, if people have been following along, and I think we covered many of the major points. But first, I guess to Joe and Darren, anything that we haven't covered that you feel is important for the community to know that didn't come up in the points, and for everybody on the call, any questions that you have over any of the topics that we've covered. So first, Darren and Joe, to you.
You want to start, Langers?
I think we've managed to cover a lot. I'm trying to think of what are the key takeaways. Joe, you jump in, and I'll try and think of my key takeaways.
So the one key thing that I think it's important that we at least highlight, that I don't think got a ton of attention here, is, so Atlas is coming on mainnet, all is well and good, but before that, we're still going to be putting it on Goerli, and I still very much hope that everybody listening will test it on Goerli and try things out and try to break stuff, and let me know if they can, or if there's any feedback or suggestions on either the docs or the Smartnode in a sort of like post-Atlas world. Testing is still important.
Yeah. That's right, exactly. So obviously we've done a fair amount of testing on Shishang, and that got quite a lot of reception. I think there's like the 40 odd nodes, and a few hundred minipools that were deployed by the community. But really, we do need the kind of like this big push on Goerli. We managed to find some good bugs on Shishang, and so Goerli should be, as we go through the test nets, the bugs should get less impact, more kind of refinements. But it's good to have that everyone testing, because we as dev team, we can test, but we have a natural bias towards testing things in a particular way, and so having real people interacting with them in weird and wonderful ways is always very, very good for shaking out those last little things. The more testing we do on Goerli, the kind of better the product will be when we get hit mainnet.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. Any other things by the team here? If not, I'd certainly invite anybody with any question over anything we've covered regarding Atlas and the Shanghai Capella update, or just anything in Rocket Pool in general, including the latest bounty payments or the tree generation. Any questions the community has?
Hey, Ken, this is Sneaky. I'll jump in with a question here. I've been wondering, once LEV8s are kind of out there and out in the wild, how does the team expect to refer to both LEV8s and the original 16s as just mini pools, or like collectively, or is there going to be some kind of distinguishing between them and any kind of formal terminology? You might have heard like 16s talked about as 16th mini pools, like legacy mini pools, and then even LEB 16s, which is kind of a bit of a misnomer, I guess. And along those lines, with some of the support tools that are out there, Beacon Chain, Rocket Scan, the Smartnode, Grafana, all those, are they going to distinguish between, you know, the original mini pools and the 8 LEV8s?
I think it'll end up just being 8 ETH mini pools and 16 ETH mini pools, unless we can, unless Maverick comes up with a good marketing, like LEBs are really it's really good at the moment for kind of like driving the narrative. I don't know. I suspect we'll end up just with 8 ETH mini pools and 16 mini pools, and people can kind of like choose between the two of them. It'll just end up being called that, but we don't have any kind of like we haven't, you know, set anything in stone in terms of terminology or anything.
Got it. Thank you.
One other question I had is, but after Mav comments, is just, you know, how's the team kind of holding up here, right? You've been kind of a whirlwind post Denver coming back, and now I think this is probably even more activity than it was around launch time, and I'd even say more activity around the merge. I mean, you guys feeling like you're going to be able to keep this pace up to get us through Atlas?
Maybe I can just jump in here first, since my name. I think when it comes to the naming, right now, obviously the default is a 16 ETH mini pool, and we're introducing 8 ETH mini pools, LEBs, whatever you want to call them, as something new. But in the future, that new mini pool configuration will kind of become the default, the normal. So I think our naming should reflect that. We would expect that most people would go to 8 ETH mini pools for one reason or another. And that aside, we'd probably want to encourage people where it makes sense for that to happen. Obviously, it's better for the protocol, for the capital to be more efficient, and the naming should reflect that. But yeah, it's a good question. I think when it comes to the naming, that's something that we'll keep in mind, that the default mini pool should be considered one with 8 ETH instead of 16.
Yeah, that's a good point. And so in terms of, you know, how the kind of team are doing, I'm not going to lie, it has been quite intense. The, you know, having kind of ETH Denver in the middle, although it's been really fantastic to kind of connect with the team, and it's something that we definitely needed to do. It's kind of not necessarily put us on the back foot, but it's certainly, you know, there's certainly some pressure there was kind of pressure anyway, to kind of like get things through. Zhejiang was very good for us, in the sense that we got a lot of, well, we got a lot of work done, particularly Joe, but we got a lot of stuff kind of sorted out during the Zhejiang integration, which was just before we went to ETH Denver. So we're in a much better position, and we're very confident now. There's quite a few balls in the air that we're kind of like working towards, but we're definitely getting there. And in terms of energy, I think that the team are really excited for Atlas. We're, you know, it's been a long time. It's a long time coming, but it's something that, you know, with the community we've been working on for a very long time, as you guys, you know, pretty much all of you know, and have been kind of involved in as well. So, you know, we're excited for Atlas, and so that, you know, that helps us kind of energize and kind of keep going. There is you know, a lot going on, but we are kind of like kind of handling it pretty well. Yeah, I think the team are really good. We're definitely, we're very, very busy, but we are energized, and we are kind of really excited for you know, getting Atlas out there and that sort of thing.
Well, that's yeah, that's good to hear, and I'm hoping you guys are going to be able to take a take a little bit of a breather post Atlas, but I can imagine the next 4 weeks are going to be quite impactful here.
Yeah, I think Easter is I think Easter is like the weekend before like everything goes live, which is typical. And but we'll try to, I think with a lot of this stuff, you do the hard work at the beginning, and it means that there's less that you need to do, near the end. That's the theory, at least. And so I'm hoping that that's kind of the case in terms of, it's going to be very relaxed near the end, because we've put so much effort into all of the preparation and all of the work that it's essentially, it's quite uneventful. So that's what we kind of aim for. And so hopefully it will kind of like, I guess, taper in terms of intensity. There's a lot going on in terms of other stuff, not just even Atlas. There's a lot, there's a lot of ETH Denver's again like a big thing for connecting partners and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of that stuff going on. Mav is kind of like under the pump in terms of that. There is kind of like two things in terms of hiring. I know we've kind of like said this a lot recently, but we're actually now putting together the position descriptions. So we will be hiring. We'll be hiring. Currently, the proposal is to hire a dev and a kind of like a partnerships sort of person. So that they're the kind of like two hires that we are kind of hoping to do, and we'll have those kind of position descriptions out within the next couple of weeks.
Oh, that's exciting news. I was expecting Joe to be wanting to chat about his Cat 5 bread, but instead it's Langers with the Cat 5 here.
That is not my bread to share, but my God, does it feel good to get it up there.
So can we just get a brief recap for Patches of exactly what the hires were again, or potential hires?
So it was basically a dev to work kind of more on the kind of like Smartnode side with Joe, but also to kind of like do general DevOps and that sort of thing as well. And then it is like a partnerships and like business and development sort of side as well. And that's basically to support myself and Mav in that area where there's because we've kind of hit this. Rocket Pool has kind of hit this stride where we are now known by fair margin, and so everybody and their dog are reaching out to us, and so we definitely need kind of like some support in that area as well. So they're the two roles.
Sweet, perfect.
At a high level, at least.
Yeah, personally, I think those are the perfect roles. I need the additional help. Great.
Yeah, one might even argue you might need two more devs.
Yeah, we need to kind of like, at the moment it's one, but we'll kind of work towards that.
Hiring itself takes time, so trying to hire 4 people right away would be a task.
Yeah, that's kind of why you don't throw people into. So that's why you don't necessarily throw people at a project that's kind of failing, or not that we're failing, but you know what I mean. If you've got a project that's kind of like under the pump, adding new people into the mix is not going to help your situation. What it actually does is it slows you down, because you're having to kind of like onboard and get people up to speed. And so that kind of doesn't tend to happen. Plus, hiring is a very intensive process. When we hired Mav, we obviously made a great choice, but it was a very intensive process. Hundreds and hundreds of submissions to kind of like go through, and you can kind of like hire people to help you with the recruitment process and that sort of thing. But it's still very very intensive, and especially as we're a very niche industry, and so you even if you went to a recruiter, they're very we're a very niche industry, so it is tricky to kind of like do that, but it is good. It's we're kind of excited for it. It'd be good to kind of have some fresh faces kind of on the team. So yeah, we're really looking forward to it.
All right. Any other questions? I know this has probably been an extraordinary long call for many of the folks, but I just feel the significance of Atlas and the complexity of it definitely warranted this long time discussion. But before we stop the recording, anybody have any remaining questions for the devs? And then afterwards, I think we could probably stop recording and just make it a chit chat session for anybody that wants to do a post a post call analysis here. But any last call for questions?
If we keep going, then we'll be good for Europe. Happy to have questions, by the way. I'm just being facetious.
I'm still laughing at that one. That's the problem with everything crypto, right? By the time the West Coast goes to sleep, Australia's up, and by the time it's midday there, Europe's up, and then the cycle just repeats. You can never sleep, otherwise you miss everything.
I mean, imagine if you took this weekend off, right? You would have missed the whole point where USDC was going to 0 and then it's fine again. All of that in like 48 hours.
All right. Well, I'm not hearing any questions, so just so we can wrap up the recording. Darren, thank you very much. Joe, I also see that we have Kane and Mav on here, but thank you all for joining and spending just the more than 2 hours with the community here, kind of walking us through it. I think we certainly owe you guys a lot of thanks for all your efforts in building Rocket Pool, building Atlas, but also just being responsive to the community and our needs to kind of understand and communicate the information here. I really want to commend you all for your efforts on this project.
Thanks, Ken, for being a great host for coming up 2 hours. Big call.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, everybody.